All right. Hi, everyone. We are here for our fourth death chat. My name's Jeff Harry. I run Rediscover Your Play, and we also have.
I'm Julia DeCaneva, and I am an intentional living coach.
And I'm Lauren Yee. I am a cultivator of curiosity and a multi-potentialite and want to do all the things.
And we started these death chats. When did we start them? October?
A few months ago.
I think it was in October-ish.
Just early October?
Yeah.
September?
And part of the reason why we started it was, because of COVID, and also because, we thought at the time, which in October was maybe there was around 50 to 100,000 people that had passed away. And now it is January 19th, 2021, and 400,000 people have passed away. And tomorrow, there is a new president being inaugurated. So today, the president-elect is actually reflecting on the 400,000 people that have passed.
It's a lot of people, and it's a weird, it's a high enough number that it's hard to wrap your head around. Because do I know 400,000 people? Probably not. What does that even mean? It's like when someone's like, if you had $1 million, you're like, I don't really know what that's like. I feel like I've heard a couple of ways that people have thought about this. One of them I actually saw in a social media post, which I thought it felt pretty real to me. Especially because you can make it personal, which what they said was, I think they had a conversation with their mom or something like that, where, okay, this 400,000 people have passed away at this point. What does that mean? Okay, well, I grew up in a small town, growing up, and you're like, okay, even if there's 30,000 people in that town, that's so many times over. Or now in the Bay Area, Oakland, that's more than half of Is that half of Oakland?
That is, yeah.
That's if you, it's oh my gosh, to lighten it for a second, it's like the Avengers. It's half the people are gone from the town I live in, which is I don't know them, but that's so crazy to think about.
Totally. I was thinking about it recently in terms of in college, I went to the University of Iowa, and people were like, oh, our stadium is so big and it fits, I don't know, don't quote me on this, maybe 65,000, 75,000. And I was like, you'd have to fill the football stadium many times over with all of the lives of all the people. It's like, oh, whoa. And, I think it's interesting because we never hear about, there's not, the number of deaths aren't reported to us all the time. I think in part, we just be crushed by the idea of it. But in another part, I think it's just that very much keep it at arm's length.
Yeah.
Out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think of so they were just doing this session for Reimagine where people can, share their grief and mourning towards people that they've lost, right? But there was maybe 500 people that were on this Zoom call right before this. And at one point they took a moment to show everyone's photo. And everyone's photo was on for 1 second. And we did the math earlier regarding this, but if you were to take 400,000 photos and divided by how many hours that would be, what did we come up with? It was about 6,666 minutes, or about
it's a little over 4.5 days straight. Or if you that, people can't survive and do that. So if you really thought about it, it was okay, it's a work week. And if you think about that, it's 2 weeks of 8 hours a day
of just
watching photos for a second.
And that's just 1 second per person. So, they also mentioned on that call, it's more people that were lost than total in World War II. So, and this is just this country,
Yeah, small detail.
Yeah, I like almost forgot about that for a second because it's so out of control.
Yeah.
And then some people that were posting on it said marked by COVID. That's how they would identify themselves. So it was like, why, why wouldn't we take the time to actually show more people and actually make this more personalized?
I feel like that the personalized thing too is something I didn't really specifically talk about either, but when with the town, especially when it's like you're growing up or like your college town or somewhere you spent a lot of time and knew enough people, like growing up, and if you don't put you like they're not necessarily people that you were like friends with, but you're like, okay, my dentist, orthodontist, veterinary, like all my friends from school, all the teachers, every single person that I knew growing up would be gone times so many more times. And so it's just like the fact that if you do kind of try to qualify it with faces that and I know a lot of people might brush it off and just be like, oh, but they're my people are fine. Yeah, but other people aren't.
Yeah.
The faces really do it.
Totally. I mean, I think part of it is that because we've gotten so far away from death, I think, as a society, that we would just be sort of crushed by the enormity of like the unlived potential and all of their regrets, because we don't, I think, also take the lens of like, when you're so deep in grief, it's hard to just be like, look at the beautiful things that that person created and look what they brought to this world, and then like end stop, because then all of a sudden you get swept by this wave of sadness, emotions, your own mortality. So yeah, just all of the things. It's like Pandora's box of
I feel like if we had more of these discussions, right, and just spoke about it more, it wouldn't be so scary. And I think the dangerous part that you said earlier, Julia, is we like try to push it far away until we have to deal with it. Almost like a really bad illness, And, I even think about my mom right now, and I'm like, I'm just so scared for my mom. Like I lost my dad, a few years ago, and I'm like, now I'm like, please, nothing happened to my mom. Like I always freak out my nephews because I'm like, dude, if you show up there, like they have a choice whether to go hang out with their friends or go see my mom. Like they can't do both. They can't be like all freewheeling, and it's just, I don't know if even the state I'm in is in a really healthy space, because even me, I'm coming from a place of scarcity of like, please, nothing happened to my mom. Please get her to get the vaccine as soon as possible,
I feel like there's two parts to that, right? Because there's you talked about just like talking about this more so it's less of a scary, weird, taboo like thing that nobody wants to talk about. Like, oh no, we don't talk about that. Like let's go talk about fun things.
Right.
Some of it is just the conversations, but then also I almost want to say like traditions or like the cultural approach at it too, which part of it is like here, it's like a scary thing that nobody talks about until it happens, then everyone's sad. And like, that's just, there's nothing, not always, but like, it feels like there's less around it, especially because in the United States, there is such a melting pot of different cultures that like, we as a whole don't necessarily have a culture of it, but then different people do. And I don't know a lot about this. So if anyone knows more, please share. But I know like there are other cultures that like do really, well, maybe not fully as a culture, but even artists, or it's part of a actual cultural thing, but there's more to sort of like the processing of end of life and death and after and annual traditions and stuff like that. So it is like kind of more talked about, where it's just like, oh, like in some Asian cultures, there's like every year at a certain time, like, which I don't think is necessarily related to that individual person. It's like a time, it's kind of like Dia de los Muertos, where it's like a certain time of the year and like everyone goes to the cemeteries and has like a little like meal, and you like candles or like leave oranges or do whatever the thing is. And like you visit and it's like, it's a thing, but we don't necessarily, not everybody always has that. A sort of, I don't know if I want to say like capitalist, but like American feeling sort of capitalist feeling thing that I feel like I've heard more lately, is like, you know, people talking about like, well, I don't want to be like, don't bury me. So people are like, okay, cremate me, but then like do something cool with the ashes and not just like spread it somewhere, but like, can you like make it into like dice that someone can use, or like like put it in like a cool jewelry thing that someone can wear, which, because we don't talk about it, is kind of like a weird thing, but it's also kind of a beautiful thing. So I feel like some of it is just like not just the talking, but like everything else, traditions and practices around that, and either creating or looking to traditions can be a really helpful thing too, because it makes it less scary. It's just like part of life at a certain point.
Totally and utterly. I mean, there are a lot of different cultures that it's very much centered around rituals, because that feels familiar and it feels comforting, and it's something that you pass down to generations and you share that together. And I think the US has the unique kind of melting pot where we're sort of like, some people have really solid traditions that their families have passed down, and then there's others of us that are kind of like, I don't really have any rituals. Yeah. And then we definitely don't talk about it. So no one's ever suggested anything that I enjoy. I have a piece of jewelry that's made out of my grandfather's ashes. And at the time, my family was like, that's kind of intense, like to wear a bracelet that's also your grandfather. But also then it's sort of like, now several years out, it totally doesn't faze me when people say that they make necklaces, and I'm like, we're all carbon together then once you're cremated. So like, I don't know. I do still think diamonds seems like the best option. That's obviously the best course of action.
If I had the choice, diamond, please.
I'm like, just please. Yeah. A lot of pressure. Great. But yeah, I definitely think that we would feel collectively as a society more comfortable through rituals. And I think the point of that comfort is that it's easier to access these really difficult emotions in that container together.
Yeah, if I think now of American capitalistic rituals around death and getting old, it very much is similar to me like fast fashion, where in fast fashion you get the outfit and then you toss it away within, I don't know, like 6 months or a year, right? And we kind of do the same thing with people, when someone dies or someone is getting old, we're like, senior citizen home, like go over there, we'll visit you from time to time. And then, okay, now you're gone, and then, all right, we got to keep this capitalistic train moving, and it's really sad, because then there's not really time for reflection. There really is not much time for grief, because you can't, because the society is built on production and value in production. And if you even think of someone that's like in a senior citizen home, they have quote unquote less value in the US society because they're not producing, they're not creating, they're not moving the economy. Yeah.
It's kind of, I don't really want to go down this pathway, but I'm gonna like mention it, and then we can move on or flip side it. But along this, like kind of what you're saying, Jeff, there's the thing that when you are the person who has to deal with somebody close to you passing, and then the transactional things that get thrown in your face, and like the guilt trips and the gross things where it's like, oh, like, is that a casket you want? You're like, yes. And they're like, oh, well, like, are you sure that that's what you want for your loved ones? You're like, this is gross. I don't like this.
Like right. You're trying to upsell me on a casket right now?
No,
like it's a Chrysler,
Yeah. And like, whether it's like a casket or an urn or a service or the land or whatever, it's just like, or tombstones. And it's just like, I don't want that for anybody, because that sucks. Like, now is not the time to be like taking advantage of all my sad feelings. So I feel like maybe if there's a more like beautiful part of death, or like the celebrating of life, or like the ashes to ashes, dust to dust, like we're all made of stars, like can we get to the nicer parts of it, because then it won't be so like, there's just such a weird disconnect there of like feelings and like advantage things happening.
Yeah. There's a lot of talk in the end of life community, as it were, about that kind of sense of empathy and the more traditional funeral homes, because their margins are really low, and so they really need to upsell you on stuff. But I'm like, maybe we need to think about just doing it totally differently then, so that you guys aren't starving and the clients you're serving don't feel like you've just taken advantage of them, you know, in their moment of weakness. I will use in air quotes. Yeah. Oh, there's a car alarm going off here. Sorry if that's. Yeah. It sounds like a clown car. I'll mute. Yeah.
I mean, I also think about, there's so much, I guess, near the, you know, at the end of life, during this process, there's so much talk around the body. Like, how do we deal with the body? What are we going to do with the body? Are you going to pump the body? Are we going to put makeup on the body? And it's just like, dude, why are we not talking about like the spirit, the soul, the person? You know, why is there not more of that happening, right? There's so many like logistical things that I had to think about when my dad died. Like, even like, who's going to lift the casket? Oh, these people. Well, these people also want to lift it. It's just like, why am I like I said on another episode is, when I saw my dad's body, I was like, that's not my dad. Like, my dad left that. That's just the body. Like, he's somewhere else. Can we just talk to him over here instead of like all putting all our attention towards just this body? So.
Yeah, I mean, it really still, it comes back to that same sense of like, it's, people love facts and they love truth, as they like to call it, and science. And so if you can focus on the body, you can see it, you can observe it, you can do all these things. And that makes people feel more comfortable in their own mortality, that like, they're not that thing, so they're still alive, and that's not going to be them, even though of course it will eventually. So yeah, I think it's just like our tendency to abstract things. Everyone is running away from these big emotions, but then we all end up having to run into them anyway at some point. So it's like, can we just do it now?
Yeah.
And just start now? And then it's just not going to like typhoon sweep us under the current. I mean,
I think that I've really enjoyed our conversations on our death chats, because I feel like, I don't know when, but I know we've discussed versions of like, not exactly like, what do you want to happen when you die, but like bits and pieces of that, which I feel like it's only weird because nobody talks about it. But if we did like a playful version of it, which is like, these things are, when we're just like what would your like ideal like funeral thing be like? And I think, Jeff, you had talked about like, I want my family to take a trip somewhere and like spread me like in 12 different places. And like, if that feels good for us now, and like we put like, this is what I want you to do, you don't have to think about it, this is what you're gonna do. And like, I feel like that relieves some things of just like the like stressors of trying to ignore part of life and death life. And also, when it comes to a point where like maybe that has to happen, then like other people aren't having to like have that weird transaction time or be stressed out and be like, oh, like what dates and like how do we do this and who needs to be like politically allowed to carry things or usher somebody or whatever. And it's weird to talk about it as like a playful activity, but it's, if you do like, you know, it's, if it feels like death is further from you now, it's less scary to talk about. Like when we're like in our 20s, we're like, oh yeah, like these are the things I want to do before I die. But if you're like 70, you're like, these are the things I want to do before I die. So like, just talk about it early, and like you can make choices and make it less scary and less weird and less painful and stressful.
Yeah. I mean, it also, how do I say this? It's almost like a child that like avoids the deep end of the pool and is just like, someday I'll go over there. And then they just never go over there. And then finally someone just throws them into that deep end, just like they have to figure it out. And that's how I feel like most of us experience it. And what I've loved most about these death chats is like, it's actually made me reflect more on my life, right? It's made me actually be more present to the point that I sometimes when I'm like doing a podcast interview or posting some blog or doing something, I'm literally thinking like, if this is the last thing I share, this is what I want to put out there. Like, this is what I want to do. And then I go for it like that, which I feel then is like more of me showing up fully than me being like, well, I'll just do it later. Let me just binge watch one more episode of X, when it's just like, dude, I don't know. I don't know how long I have. All 400,000 people that have died just in the US alone thought they would be alive on this date, right? Like, let's just be honest about, like, why do we think we're the invincible ones?
I just wrote a post to be posted in the future about that, of just like, I still don't understand why everybody thinks it's not going to be them, in the same way that people, like, when you get cancer and everyone's kind of like, well, what did you do to get cancer though? Because like, I can't get cancer. And I'm like, I have no idea, and there were no symptoms, and I have no idea. Like, I mean, I have some sense in my own sense, but I hate to break it to people that the uncertainty of it all is, in fact, the like life. Life is uncertainty, except the only certainty is that you will die. So why not explore what that looks like and figure out what you want? And it's kind of like my end of life document for my family is like, I planned a wedding with everything I could possibly want on my own, because I get to call all of the shots on it. And then I don't even have to worry if it goes well at the end. So it's sort of like the ideal setup. Like, throw your favorite party that you don't have to like worry about.
Oh, I love that. Throw your favorite party you don't have to worry about. Oh, I might have to write about that. But I think
that just feel like a new hip like funeral service home, like throw the party that you've always wanted but don't have to worry about.
Yeah. We should probably start it. Yeah.
I feel like it would be it's like primed for this generation.
Yeah.
But also, I love what you said earlier about like, why would we not be planning for the one thing we know is certain? It's the only thing that's certain. So of course you would plan it. No, I don't want to play that. Let me plan out my work life, which never goes the way I want to, or let me plan out my marriage or me having kids or whatever the thing is that ends up never working out that way. And then being sorely disappointed when it doesn't happen that way and being like, this is ridiculous, instead of just focusing on, that's certainty.
Do you think that, okay, I don't 100% know where I'm going with this, so
great,
apologies in advance. So, okay, there's like your life and here's death, and people don't want to think it's like, that's coming at some point, somewhere. Yeah. And then Jeff, you were just saying the things like, I want to get married and have kids and do this and vacation here, and like the bucket list things or whatever, those things. Do you feel like those are, I mean, like, are those might be real things, but I feel like they're like distractions that people almost, I know that this isn't how it works, but I almost feel like it's things that people are like, if they were cards, like this is birth and this is death. Yeah. And then the more cards that you put, people feel like they're pushing death further away, but that's not what's happening. But they're just like, oh, but I'm going to do all these things to like, that'll happen later because I got to do this stuff first. It's like, well, yeah, you gotta, but you don't gotta is the problem part.
Yeah.
But people are like, well, if I do this, it'll like give you those landmarks between birth and death. But death could show up whenever, which is a little scary to say. Spoilers. But yeah, it's like they're trying, it's like a life punch card, and they like want to get the most like
Subway
scavenger hunt
sandwiches,
items
yeah.
before they reach the
You want
end.
to get the Subway sandwiches before they...
Or like something like they're trying to like tick all the boxes before they get to the end. It's just like, well, what do you actually want to do? What do you actually
want to do? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is hard also.
Because if you, at the beginning of your life, imagine this, you're like 3 or 4 and someone instead was like, hey, you're going to die someday. What do you want to do before you die? And at 3, you start writing down what you want to do. And then you do the same thing at 4 and 5, but you keep reflecting on it each year and being like, hey, this is what I actually want to do. No, I don't want to become an astronaut anymore. I'm now 7 and I don't think astronaut's my way to go. I want to become a basketball player. But like whatever your thing is, I think that would help you gain clarity about really what is going to bring you fulfillment and joy. But instead, I think we don't ask that. Instead, we just listen to what everyone else has to tell us. We listen to society, and society's like, hey, you got to graduate, you got to get a degree, you got to make a lot of money, you got to get married, you got to have kids, you got to do all this, and then we get all those check boxes thinking like, if I get all those check boxes, maybe that will not only bring me joy and fulfillment, but what you said earlier, which is like, well, if I just had a baby, there's no way I'm going to die now.
Right. Like I have to like raise them.
I got to raise this baby. I just got married. There's no way that,
Yeah. Jeff, you've just summarized my coaching approach in one thing. Soliloquy.
I don't even know what I said.
Amazing. Yeah.
That's why Julie
and this is why I'm so obsessed with, and I'm so obsessed with intentional living because like once I unpacked the parts of death that I was afraid of, and like people are afraid of physically dying, but they're afraid of leaving their family. They're afraid of people not missing them when they're dead and they didn't accomplish things. There's so many layers to that. And so like once I picked that apart for myself, I was like, oh, I actually understand what I give a shit about then. Because if I could just die at any moment, that if I know I go into every day doing the things that I would like to be doing, or they reflect the person I want to be, or the life that I want to be living, both ideally, then like, great, hit me with a bus tomorrow then. Like, of course, there's so many things that I want to do in my life. And I would love to live for as long as possible because I have a really long book list, if for no other reason. But like, there will always be more things. And I think it's so beautiful that I do have limited space, because if you, there's actually a death deck question. This is perfect. So if a drug were created to provide immortality, would you take it? A, totally, who wouldn't want to live forever? B, nope, one lifetime is plenty. C, maybe if I could lock in my hottest age. And I would say B, no effing way. I don't want to live forever. No, because it just doesn't, to me, then there's no meaning in anything. You could just wait till tomorrow to do the thing, because, so, that's why I'm an intentional living enthusiast. Would you guys want to be immortal?
No,
I don't think so.
Like the whole beauty of living is that it ends. That's what makes it so magical. And they even said that in Avengers when they were like, like human race is going to destroy itself. And Vision said, he was just like, well, that's what makes it beautiful, is like that it eventually will end. And this is the magic of it. And this reminds me of a pseudo date I went on once right near Lake Merritt. And what we did was because we were friends, we wrote out our obituaries. Like that was what
like your own?
We did it. We either did it there in the bar, or we did it before and then shared it with each other. But either way, we did something, and it was really like just interesting to just write that out, because it was like, what do I really want to be known for? What do I want my family and my friends to know me? Do I want to be, will it be all these accolades and accomplishments? Does that stuff actually matter? When in my obituary, or does it not? And how does that reflect what I'm doing on a regular basis?
Good on you for doing that. Also, I hope it wasn't a first date. That sounds very intense.
It was. We only had one, so
it was
there you go.
first and last. But that sounds like super interesting because the thing that actually makes me think about too, which is strays a little bit from the death chats, but like obituaries and what's important, and kind of like the living version is like people's like bios or like introductions when you get presented to like, oh, and this person's gonna speak, and like they're an author and they did these things and they won this award, and you're like, nobody cares. Not nobody, but I mean like are there more interesting things you could say about me?
Yes.
I just wrote a bio. I recorded a podcast. Yeah, and everybody previously on the podcast, it's like they've done this thing and this thing and they've been featured, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, Julia is an intentional living enthusiast and she loves sweet potatoes and sunsets. Like I just had all of the things because I was like, well, on one hand, I don't have a ton of accolades as a coach because I just started. And then on the other, like, who cares?
Yeah.
Like, does that mean anything? Like, tell me something meaningful. Side note, sweet potatoes and sunset sounds like a lovely, like, Southern restaurant or something.
So I maybe a Hawaiian, like... Ooh,
also maybe that.
Bistro? Yeah. I could make that happen.
There's a lanai.
Yeah, of course. Obviously.
Anyway, sorry.
I love that.
Someday we'll open that together. It'll be great.
Future business plans.
Yeah. When we're done with it.
We've already come up with 2 business plans, by the way. I just want to point that out. Oh, Lauren, would you want to become immortal?
I don't think so. I mean, for the same reason that you all are saying, but then also for me, like, I really enjoy people and connecting, like with you all and like friends and family. And it's like the extended terrible version of like when you're on like school break in college and some of your friends all go back to school and you're like the last one who's like, I have a break, but like no one's here to hang out with. Yeah. Or like, well, all of those like friends and family generations passed away. So now I got to make a new generation of friends, which is like, I guess, but it's just like, it becomes like a Groundhog Day situation, right? Like it doesn't matter. Like, who are these people? It doesn't really matter. I'm going to just cycle through everybody again. And then when you keep being here.
Yeah. I think you would also then realize like how people are not getting so old, like being like 200, 300, 400 years old. You'd start to realize like just people are doing the same patterns over and over and over again.
It'd be maddening.
And then you'd be like, I'm having the same conversation. Oh, I'm having the same relationship.
Like,
I've already had this marriage 30 times or whatever. How many times? You know, like, I mean, and I don't know if you've ever met someone that's like 90 or 100 that doesn't want to be alive anymore, but they are not happy. They are like, when are we going to wrap this up?
It's true. I think there's a sense of like completeness, and even being young and dying early, I think you can still reach your own sense of completeness. I think I've mentioned this before because it just stuck with me so much. There's on the show My Last Days, which used to air on Soul Pancake. Yeah, I think I talked about this, and then was on the CW, and there was one young woman with cystic fibrosis, and she was like, we're all dying. I'm just dying a lot faster than you guys. And it was just like, just because I think at that point she was maybe 16, 17, 18, somewhere teenage years. And just to have that like sort of surrender.
Yeah.
It's just like, yes,
or like
please.
Awareness.
I mean, ironically, I wish she could live a million times longer so that she could talk to all the people, but it just was so beautiful.
It also makes you think like, how do I live today? Like, as if it's my last day. Like, what does that look like? And not in that, how do I live today? It was my last day, so I'm going to travel the world, or, I'm going to do, but like the small things. Like, what are the small things that you're doing so that if my life ended tomorrow, I could go to bed tonight being like, yo, I did as much as I feel I could today to show up fully, because that's all I have right now.
Yeah, and I think in that there's an important distinction too, which is like a big part of my own concept of intentional living, because I think everybody has their own sort of version of intentional living. But it's also like I'm going to watch all of the Bridgerton episodes in one sitting today, because like that's the vibe I'm on, and it's fine. It wasn't a
Right.
waste of my time. It was entertaining. I got to decompress a little bit, like not having additional pressure
Yeah.
to be more productive, to do more things. It's just don't do things you hate.
Yeah.
Right.
That.
Right.
Ugh.
I
Which
had
is-
similar feelings to that. Just because like it's the phrase itself of just like what do you want to do today? Like if it's your like it feels very like you can only do that so much and then you're gonna burn out on doing the things you want to do. It sounds
Yeah.
exhausting. But if it is just like, okay, like if you're trying to beginning of the day and like I don't necessarily do this super well, but like intentional meditation type things of just like, okay, like how do I want to feel at the end of the day? Like I want to be like happy, I want to have like connected with somebody, and like okay, like that way it's like those are the things that I want to be doing. Like don't do the things that you hate, do things that you like. Sometimes you have to work because you got to survive and make money, but don't do it for 14 hours that day maybe.
Yeah, there's something that I feel is even more important than the actual tasks or the goals to achieve, and it's more the intention behind it, right? Like I want to live a joyful and fulfilling life. I want to have a joyful and fulfilling moment right now. What do I want to do? I want to be on this call. This is the thing that's bringing me joy and fulfillment. Awesome. I'm fully present here, right? Instead of, and I think a lot of times we're constantly, or not we, but you know, the collective we is like constantly looking for like the next thing of like, well, what am I, either what am I supposed to be doing, or YOLO, whatever that YOLO stands for, I forgot now, but like,
You only live once.
you only live once. So it's just like, I gotta do the crazy thing. I gotta leap off of like, this building or ski down the slope because that is the YOLO so that I feel alive. And then you can kind of actually get addicted to that adrenaline rush, which again is also not healthy because then you also put yourself in a situation where you might kill yourself earlier, So it's more
but
like,
would they be happy with that because YOLO?
and maybe, right? So I guess it's more like, is this joyfully, is it joyful and fulfilling right now for me to be writing this like blog post or writing this thing? Or is it joyful, fulfilling for me to be watching Bridgerton right now? Like both are the same. They're all the same because like there's no judgment on what is good and what is not good because everyone has their own standard.
The deck question that was about the Immortal pill drug, whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like all three of us were like, no, why? Never. And part of me is like, okay, somebody must say yes, hottest age, or somebody might say like, yes, I want to live forever. I'm like, who are these people? Like,
my husband would be in camp A. He wants to live forever. He's afraid of like all the normal things that people are afraid of, like a lot of loss and grief. And I'm like, I went on a big tangent with him about why he shouldn't want to be immortal for all the reasons that we've cited. But I think he probably would say A. Offhand, he would. And in fairness, his grandpa just turned 99. So like,
so he's well on his way.
That's basically forever. Yeah.
I feel like that's interesting because like if it's like there's the individual, like you as an individual of like, I mean, I guess if you are no longer alive, you can't feel the things, but we fear feeling the things.
Yes.
But if you did live forever, you would feel those things over and over and over and over for everyone around you, which is stressful to think about. Like that sounds, again, part of me is like,
gone to hundreds of funerals.
I think unless everyone else gets pills of immortality, and then
if
you
it's
get
like
into
group
this other
immortality
existential debate of like, does no one have kids because the population would just take over
destroy
the whole
itself?
world?
Oh,
like,
I mean,
yeah.
But also imagine if you took a mortality pill with somebody else and then you were like, I don't want to spend
eternity with you.
Eternity with you.
Like, 80 years was great.
Like 200 years. We went 200 years. We probably should have broke up at 80 years, but we went.
I mean, that's kind of real in history, right? It was like death till us part, till death do us part. But people used to live to like 40 or 50.
35.
That is a
Yeah.
good point.
And now
Maybe
we're
that's
much-
the reason there's so many divorces, is they only live for like.
If we all took immortal eternity pills, divorce, like no one would get married ever again. Like it just would. It'd
Yeah, it
be
would
a
be
different
useless.
society.
Yeah.
Till death do us part. That's forever. It's not.
It was interesting, and I would love to know your answer to this. So, I was on a podcast today, and the person asked me, "What do you want your legacy to be?" And I was like, I don't really care, or I don't think that's the right question to ask, at least for me, because I was like, because there's a lot of like ego in legacy, right?
That's I want to ask, like, because okay, I feel like legacy gets thrown around a lot. But like, what does that mean? Like, what does that mean to like, which I guess it could be different for different people. Like, what does that mean? Because like, I feel like legacy for a lot of people, it's like what celebrities or like sports heroes or like whatever. It's like a huge thing. And for like regular people, like what is a legacy? So like, how do you define it?
I mean, when I was trying to answer it, I was just like, I don't think MLK or Malcolm X or Che Guevara or any of the people that, I think about that had huge impacts were thinking about legacy. They were just doing their thing. And then most of them all three of those people got assassinated. So they never really had a chance to be like, what's my legacy going to be? But, even for, my music teacher, Judith Kirby, right? She never was planning to have a legacy, but tens of thousands of people that were in her class will remember her for the rest of their life, and also will take bigger risks either on stage or not on stage because of something that she did.
I feel like
she never asked for that. I mean, that was never her goal.
That's like, it's hard to define, or like it's hard to ask and then also to self-define. But I feel like for me, a lot of like legacy is just like not like what I'm leaving behind, because like I don't feel like I have like like I don't have anything to like actively leave behind, but it's like how I want to be remembered, I guess, more, which like is like the obituary, like what do I want people to know about me or thing of just like I cared, I connected with people, I wanted to help people, I like those things, which is, it's hard to, it feels like that's like not, I feel like that is legacy, but I feel like it's not what people associate with legacy, which makes it a very confusing question.
Yeah.
I was like, do you remember, what did you
Yeah,
say?
my answer was, well, I want people to remember that I was like this weird, strange, nerdy, authentic, crazy person that showed up this way. And not so much that you need to remember me for that, but more like, do you like, be your weird, nerdy, strange, all of the things self, because like, that's what we need out there. We need more of that. And that would be a great legacy. And they don't have to remember me to do that, but that would be awesome, because the ripple effect, I think, would be more important than me having a plaque somewhere, or a street name or whatever.
Those are all like byproducts of just, I feel like it's a byproduct of you being your youest you for the world. And then when people are that, they like accidentally get remembered and like get plaques and stuff, because people are so proud of those people doing the right thing or being them. Oh my God, I need a better sentence structure. But like, it's because like I don't actually know the source. Like I don't know if this is a real thing, but like, kind of just like, I don't know if P.T. Barnum is like the first circus person, whatever, but like they made a circus and like made a thing out of it, and they're like known for that, which I don't know if that was their intention or if it was just like, I like animals and people seeing them and I want to do a show, and then it kind of just became a thing on accident.
Right.
And now they're like, oh, like, yeah, that name means is associated with this other thing, which like your name might be associated with weird, crazy, have fun, do what you want things.
Well, I'm even wondering, like, how many people that died really cared that the statues were made of them?
I would love to know. I mean, I think this definitely brings up also the sense of like impact on people. Like, my intention in life is just to encourage people to live their like genuine life that they'll love then, because you only live once. So it's sort of, I'm like, well, people don't need to remember me. They don't need to live my life. I don't want to be an influencer. Don't do what I'm doing. Do your own version of what I'm doing in my own life, and like let that be its thing. Because I'm reading the Autobiography of Malcolm X right now. Like I'm almost done. Like I'm almost 500 pages in, and he talks a bit about how he just wants to tell as many of the Black Americans about the like brainwashing and his new ideas and Islam, of course. And so there is this sense of like, I just want to tell all of my people all of the things. And I'm going to just try to do that for as long as I can until I'm dead, which, as he had even said, was like probably going to be sooner rather than later, but he was just going to keep doing the thing. Yeah.
I mean, when I think of someone I would love to like emulate, or the impact that this person had, I might have sent this video to y'all, but if I haven't, Johnny Barnes, oh my gosh. Johnny Barnes is this Caribbean dude, I think in the Virgin Islands. I got to check that, but in the Virgin Islands. Well, anyway, or maybe the Bahamas, but anyway, there's this triangle piece of land. And what do they call those roundabouts? They're these roundabouts that cars drive through. And he would go there in that roundabout, and he would go at like 5 a.m. every day, almost every day. And he would just sit there and go, I love you, have a good day, have a good day, I love you, have a good day, have a good day. And he would do this for 4 to 6 hours every day on this small island. And people, like in the documentary, it's only like 10 minutes. People in the documentary were like, no one ever told me they loved me except for Johnny Barnes. This one person was going to have her first baby, and Johnny didn't wave to her. Johnny didn't see her. So she had her husband turn around and drive and keep going until she saw him go, I love you, have a good day, have a good day. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And that guy did get a statue, but he didn't want a statue, but still like that. And he simply was just reminding people that they were like loved in the world, right? Like, oh my gosh, so good.
The inherent goodness. There is a Death Deck question that's your memorial plaque. So you have to fill in the blanks. Here lies blank, best remembered for blank and blank.
Ooh, blank and blank. Only 2 blanks?
Well, I mean, you can always add commas and stuff. Yeah.
Asterisk.
C footnote.
CV attached.
C blog post.
Enclosed. Okay, so here lies blank, whoever we are.
Your name, yeah.
And
best remembered for blank and blank.
Ooh. Have you thought about this? Are you prepared?
No, not even a little bit. That's why I made that face. I was like, I didn't think about this. Yeah.
I'll go even though I'm not prepared, and then I'll probably come back and be like, wait, I have new ideas. Wait a minute.
I'd like to change mine.
But I would be like, here lies Jeff Harry. What's the second sentence?
Best remembered for
embracing play or just play. Best remembered for and showing up fully as his weird nerdy self.
That feels right so far.
Yeah.
It feels on brand for your life so far.
Like
you're doing great.
Accurate, yeah.
It's pretty accurate.
Mm-hmm. I think here lies Julia DeCaneva, best remembered for. Ooh. I mean, just going
But
on
not.
nonstop about intentional living to everyone who will listen.
That should be the second one, so you could just make it a paragraph
Yeah.
for this and intentional living, which is really important to everyone. So you should really
follow these 4 points. Yeah. Oh my gosh, too funny. And I think, like, if I picked a second thing, it would be for being unabashedly herself.
Oh,
Hmm.
that's so
Best remembered for intentional living and being her unabashed self.
that's a great line, and I hope like that
We'll
feels
pass it
good.
around, yeah.
I feel like that I feel like they pair really well. Both
Wait,
of yours,
Julia,
actually.
can you say the whole sentence again?
Oh, yes.
Okay, we'll
And
try
then
it.
I'll say mine, and then Lauren, you go.
No pressure. So here lies Julia D. Caneva, best remembered for being an intentional living enthusiast and living unabashedly as herself.
Whew. That's your next bio, by the way. But
yeah,
maybe
I
not
really
Here
like that. I'm
Lies.
like Clubhouse.
yeah.
I see you. Yeah.
Like the living
That one
version.
down.
All right, I'll go. Here lives Jeff Harry. What's the? I keep saying.
Best remembered for.
Best remembered for forgetting stuff.
Short-term
Here lies
memory.
Jeff Harry, best remembered for embracing play and being his weird, nerdy, generous, loving self.
How many commas were in there?
I put
1, 2,
slashes
3.
so that it felt
Slash.
more.
Amazing.
Okay. Hold on. I
You
haven't.
can always amend it. It's not a.
I-
It's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
literally
And I was like,
set
I
in
haven't
Set
stone.
in stone, or maybe
Hey.
it is.
True.
Hello,
I-
maybe it is set in stone.
Waka waka.
I'm trying to think of like what is the word I was. Okay, so here lies Lauren Yee, best remembered for consistent, caring connections and asking all the questions.
Yeah.
Ooh, and asking all the questions. I love that.
Mhm.
Those feel correct.
Yeah.
See, this is amazing, right? We got more clarity doing this.
I'm like,
That is also your next bio, for the record. Both of you.
I mean,
Yeah.
hello.
I-
These are
yeah.
really good bios. Let's asking all the questions.
I mean, it's
Apparently-
true in a lot of ways.
Yeah. There you go. We should just start promoting to everybody that the best way to write your next social media bio is to pretend you're dead.
Pretend it's a tombstone.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna add. This is gonna be ridiculous, but I think I'm gonna add on my bio at the bottom, like on my obituary or on my
tombstone.
On my tombstone, it would say blank, and see
Yeah.
if anyone actually uses that.
Or if they like not cut it off.
Yeah, like,
Yeah.
I don't need that. That's kind of weird.
I kind of like that because like, okay, so like going, oh my God, I don't remember where it was in this conversation, but the things that we all just said individually are very much the like intentional, how do you legacy your day? Like, what are the things that you want at the end? It's like, I ask a lot of questions because I want to find out stuff and I like to connect with people, and like intentional living and being your you and being your weird, nerdy, loving, generous you and playing, like those are the things we're doing. Like that's what we want. And I feel like we all know those things, but do we always focus on it? I don't know. But
that
that's-
would be the
ooh.
great question to ask when we're like, "Am I living my
tombstone.
own?"
Yeah. You're-
Hashtag, are you living your tombstone?
I love this. It's just like if you had 6 weeks to live, what matters to you on your to-do list today?
Mm-hmm.
Ugh.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, oh, probably not a lot of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully
Yeah.
all of it, but
Hopefully.
a lot of people, it's like, no. But I actually think it's really magical because when I give clients, let's say, and even just friends, I'll be like, so what do you do in a given day? And then what would your perfect day look like? people don't actually say like, I'd be sipping some kind of drink on a tropical island doing nothing. People's like perfect day is actually like, I eat a delicious breakfast that I had enough time to cook, and I got to see my kids, and I had dinner with my husband or my mom, or like, it ends up just being so much simpler than I think we think until we sit down to actually do that.
So much of that.
Yeah.
I feel like we may have talked about this, or I've just talked about it in my life, but like the thing when you have somebody that you care about who is no longer around, yes, sometimes there's the big, grand gesture things that you remember, but most of the time it's the mundane, quantity time, random, like, oh, every Sunday we'd go to this restaurant and this, and like my brother would always spill tea and this would happen. And like, that is a memory you have. And like, did that person think that that's going to be part of your good memories? With like, probably not, but that's what it is. It's just like it's the little regular stuff.
I would watch golf with my dad, which, by the way, I hate watching golf. And he would fall asleep, and then I would try to turn the channel so I could watch Armageddon or whatever bad movie was on, and then he'd wake up and be like, "Oh, I'm watching
this doesn't sound like golf."
And it was just like, "You're not even watching," and we would have that discussion
every time.
Right? Every time, yeah.
But that's the thing.
Football and fall asleep, you know, like.
Yeah, it's like it's the good and the bad, right? Like whatever it might be. Because like there are unfortunate stories that I've heard where there's like parents like lost a young kid to like a terminal disease of some kind, and like when they were gone, they missed how their kid would like always like run like in and out of the yard and like slam the screen door.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like you miss, like you're like, God, just can you not do that? But like that's what you miss. It's the little dumb things.
Yeah, it's the things that make you not just a body.
Yeah, it's your quirky
I guess
things.
The question then to ask though is, how do you enjoy those mundane moments in the moment? Or is that even not how we should be approaching it?
Well, if I may, I think in my experience with mindfulness and bringing a quality of attention to the present moment, the fact that you are present is what helps you like bankroll that. Because if you don't even notice the little quirks about people because you're like thinking ahead or focused on the past, then you never have that through line. That it never becomes a memory that you love because you just weren't paying attention. Yeah. So I feel like that's the key. In the moment, you might not even notice.
It's true. I feel like the practice version of it though, could be, it is like, you know, like you do it as whatever regular or once a year or once a month or whatever, but like just like trying to like reflect in like the gratitude feelings of like, what did I appreciate this month that was like not a big, like took a trip, someone got married, like, but like what are like the mundane things that I really appreciated this recent time period? Because there's also a thing about like when you like to feel like for me, I'll speak for myself, to feel like I'm living a good life, I want to feel like happy or joyful or like have good feelings about it. And there's science behind when you revisit good memories, you like get that happy boost again.
Resourcing. Yeah.
Yeah. And so being able to like remember, because like it's been less busy and go with quarantine pandemic times, but usually even still like life happens and we don't always make time to like reflect, remember, like there's social media, but how often do I go to my own or a friend's and like scroll back a year? It's like thank goodness for people's like time hop or whatever the things are. They're like, remember this thing 2 years ago? You're like, oh, that was really cute. But I'm not necessarily doing that on my own. I did back in like high school and college because I really liked pictures and photographs. So I'd like print and like put them in albums and like flip through it sometimes, like friends. But digitally, I don't make time to do that.
Yeah,
it's like weird because it's easier, but it's like it's like more accessible, but I like don't do it. So if you have a way to practice like thinking about like just remembering like, oh, what did I like this last week, month. It doesn't have to be every day because sometimes that's a lot for people. Could be like the annual New Year's thing or Thanksgiving. You know, it could be like a specific time. But I feel like that is a practicable version of trying to do it.
I actually attended this event where we did that near the end of the year. And it was interesting because it was a virtual event, but then they gave us 20 minutes to be like, reflect on your past year and actually look at each month and try to find something that you really were like grateful for, or really like that brought you a huge amount of joy or fulfillment. And it was interesting going back to my emails and my Instagram posts and Facebook and all those things, and being like, oh my gosh, I did that. Like, I traveled Australia in January. Like, what? I didn't even know I moved. Like, and it's fascinating to like reflect on that. And then I just wrote this article, you know, about my fun, joy, play index, because like, it's interesting. Like, I think it's today or tomorrow. Most people forget their New Year's resolution.
Oh, it only lasts for like 3 weeks. It
only lasts a certain amount, like 3 weeks, 2 weeks. I thought it was even shorter. So I threw away resolutions a long time ago and was like, hey, how do we focus on thinking about our fun, joy, and play moments of the year? So then I would ask myself my 7 questions. Some of them were like, what was your most awe-inspiring moment? When did you laugh the most? You know, what like blew your mind? You know, who was with you during some of these moments? And then the last question being like, how do we create more fun, joy, play moments in 2021? Because anticipation is one of the really powerful ways in which you can also bring a lot of joy in savoring what's possible or what's next. Because I don't think we do a lot of that.
People aren't very intentional about it. They're just kind of missing out on the opportunity.
Right.
I think sorry.
Oh, no.
No, I was going to say, Lauren and I like work on a lot of projects together. And this year we brainstormed instead of what we wanted to do, like what tasks we want to get done, what goals, how much money do we want to make? We didn't write any of that down. We just came, what are our fun, joy, play moments?
Yeah.
And they were like, we want to help people. We love tipsy brainstorms. We love these certain things. How do we do more of that in order to like maybe accomplish these things? But even if we don't accomplish these things, we're at least doing the things that bring us joy.
Yeah. I love that so much. I think I have a similar practice of like, how do I want this to feel? Or like, how do I want to feel? And then when you're like, oh, I want my best life to feel full of ease and calm and peaceful. And I'm like, oh, it turns out my best life is like sitting in a squishy chair, meditating with a book by a fireplace, and not like this big sweeping anything. It's just like, oh, okay. That's the route I can take to get to the thing that I want. And there's a million different versions of this. And I can find ease in traveling, but I can also find ease in just like being happy about the apartment that I live in right now. And yeah, keep it simple. I love those.
Go ahead, Lauren.
I saw both of our mouths were like,
You're like,
I don't know if I'm straying from where you're going, but I was just going to say, like, circling back to like the death part of all this too, is it's like, I feel like so like the disconnectedness is there's like, this comes up a lot, but it's just like, we feel like we want to accomplish certain things or goals or tasks or jobs or marriage or kids or like whatever. But if it is more of like the feeling or fun or happy, then it like, not completely, but like can kind of shift the lens a little. So it's not so like daunting and productive or not productive. Like, I didn't do any of the things towards my goals this year. Like, yeah, but did you have a good time? Did you hang out with cool people? Was it fine? Cool. It's totally fine.
And also just kind of like dictating like how I even thought of 2021 is like when Lauren and I came up with our fun, joy, play moment, like intentions, and also reflected on the past year. One of the things we really appreciated were these conversations. This was a big thing, right? So of course, then when we were reflecting on, wow, those are really amazing, fascinating, in-depth like moments of 2020 that kind of defined some of our 2020. It then inspired us to be like, we got to reach back out to Julian. Let's do more of these. Like, you know, and it was, so it's, again, it's just like, it's already dictated, like living an actual fulfilling, joyful life isn't that difficult if you're willing to ask the hard questions.
That is true.
Which sometimes involve death, apparently.
Yeah.
And often involve death.
Often involve death.
Sorry about it. Yeah.
Most certain.
I think that there's such a big misconception with like talking about death and dying, because I think people are just worried they're just going to like get swallowed in the sadness. And there's so much like, there's just so much to it. Like that I'm sure that is there, sure. But there's also this like whole other rich world. And I'm like, oh, I'm just gonna try to tell everybody about that now.
No, I was on a community of 7 like call today, and they were talking about mental agility and mental fitness. And then we broke out into these breakout rooms, and this person, Shantae, was like, I wasn't fully paying attention to mental, the talk and everything. But when I think of like mental fitness and how I've been able to like navigate this year, she was just like, I lost my mother, my sister, and my brother this year. And I was like, oh. And then she goes, I lost my newborn son a few years ago. But having experienced that helped me to navigate this time. And what I've learned through like prayer and being present and leaning on my friends and family, like how to live in a way, she said, more intentionally. And there was something also like, which is crazy, but it was something also vibrant about her as she was sharing so vulnerably, while each of us before then were just being like, oh, my mental fitness is this, and I do this exercise and this exercise. And then she brought it like home to like, yo, I'm going through one of the hardest years of my life. It could be the hardest year of my life. And I'm still here, fully alive. I was like, oh my gosh. Super inspirational.
Yeah.
And humbling.
That actually, it makes me like actively think, I know this because obviously, but like when you talk about death, it's so related to life, but so many people, when they talk about life, do not talk about death. And I feel like that's like the big confusing thing that's happening. It's like they're like you can't have one without the other.
Yeah.
So but how come we can talk about one from this direction, but from this direction it's like, no, stop sign. Whoa, don't go there. But anytime you talk about death, you have to talk about life or the living and what they have to do for death. Or when somebody dies, then who you lean on, who is still alive. And it's actually very, there's a lot of dissonance in my head right now about how that's so opposite and confusing.
Yes. We do love as a society, like an opposite, like we'd love to have either or and not this kind of like
melding
both.
Of, yeah.
And we're like,
I've talked about that a lot.
Yeah.
Where it's just like, oh, it's black or white. There's no gray. You're like, everything's gray.
Everything's
gray.
Yeah.
I just had this epiphany. Y'all help me with this epiphany right now. I don't like conversations that have ego. They destroy. This is part of the reason why I don't like Clubhouse right now. I haven't been able to find an authentic conversation, and I'm sure they're there. I just have to look hard enough. But authentic conversation where it's not about the ego, because the ego actually dies. The ego is like, it's so fragile and frail, but like I don't want, as Kevin Carroll says, like I don't want transactional conversations. I don't want to use someone by having this conversation. I want like a transformational conversation where we get to some level.
Somewhere.
This is why I love this conversation. Is we get to somewhere that we would have never gotten to otherwise. If we all hadn't like checked our ego and then been like, okay, we're going somewhere, but we're going there together.
Let's go on a trip.
Yeah. But it's like human connection. Because like really, if I got a really basic questionnaire about both of you, I could probably fill out little to none of the details. But and then on the other hand, I feel like I know you both so deeply. And I think that's the magic of it.
Yes.
You're like, oh, again, CV attached. Yeah, we can look at it later. Yeah.
Enclosed facts.
Yeah.
That's exact. I love that. That is like, yeah, nice to meet you. Where you're from? What's your job? Cool. Let's talk about something interesting.
Yeah.
Think about the amount of conversations you've either had on planes or some other random place where you never exchanged names and you had such deep conversations. And only afterwards you were like, what's your name, by the way?
We've had such a great conversation. Who are you?
Meanwhile, I've been to so many conferences where it's like, hi, my name's Richard. Hi, my name's Jeff. And then you start saying each other's ego stuff. And then you're like, I don't even know who that dude was. Did we meet before? I've never met you before.
Oh, totally.
Who?
We'll have to bring death chats to Clubhouse because I have the same experience where I was like, no.
I think one time we should just have a death chat between us three, and then whoever else
shows up.
Whoever shows up, shows up. And if no one shows up, who cares? It just doesn't matter anyway.
It's true. Then we're just doing what we like, and then that's how communities get built. Honestly, is like some people show up, and then other people see if they like it, and if they do, they stay. If they don't, they're out. It's fine.
So I have a final question, or I don't know how much time we have, but a question around because I just said it doesn't matter anyway. So how can things matter and not matter when you embrace death? Because I know people that are like, I'm going to die anyway, so it doesn't really matter, right? And then there are other people that are like, I embrace death, so all in all matters. So how do we?
This is a very like existential feeling last question.
I mean, I'm struggling with it. That's why I need your help.
Why does it matter, or like matter versus not matter versus gray area?
I mean, it's both. In my experience, I remember saying to my therapist earlier in 2020, like, I just don't matter that much, but in a really liberating way. Like it takes the pressure off of like, what I do can be important to other people and also doesn't need to be a legacy set in a bronze statue important. So I think you have to make sure that you're not slipping too far into like nihilism of it doesn't matter.
Yes.
But then because you do that by connecting with people you love, meeting interesting people, and so when you refocus on like what makes your heart shine, then you're like, okay, so this matters because I just really like to feel this way. Like, and that matters to me. So that's enough.
That's kind of where I started to get to also as I was like listening to you and like half zoning and being like, what is my brain trying to tell me right now?
Put them together.
I feel like it's what doesn't matter. And, sweeping generalization a little bit because of course some things definitely matter. But it's like to some extent in like the general regular world, your actions don't matter as much because you make a choice and then you have to make new choices off of that choice. There was this great video I think that I saw recently. I think maybe Jeff, I saw from you, but there was a video where it's just like one of those like kid toys and it's like a square and a triangle and a circle and an oval. And they're like, where does this shape go? And it's square. Like, you're right, it goes in the square. And now we have like this triangle shape. Where does it go? You're right, it goes in the square because it all fits and it doesn't matter. Yeah. You made a choice and it worked, or it like something happened and then you have to make new choices off of that choice. So to some extent, your actions don't really matter because like so many things aren't permanent. It's just how you decide to make choices and then choose, your own adventure from there. But what does matter is how you make people feel, which makes me think of the Maya Angelou quote, right? Where it's like, people aren't going to remember what you say, but they're going to remember how you made them feel. And like, that's like, it goes back to like the legacy things. And like, does it matter that I like what grades I got in school? No. I mean, to some extent, because like, you got to survive and whatever things, but like, nobody cares what my GPA was anymore. Like, it seemed really important then, but nobody cares. But like, the number, like for me, I'm apparently a weirdo, and I have double digits of friends still from like middle school, high school, college, where some people are like, I have like 2 people that I talk to. And they're like, no, I have got like 20 something. I've got multiple groups of friends from different levels of my schooling, because I liked them and we connected, and like how we made each other feel was a certain way. Like, yes, there's stories and certain actions that I remember, but like most of their actions I'm not going to remember. It's like how we made each other feel in those moments. So I feel like that's what matters versus doesn't matter in a very general sense to me in this moment.
Yeah, it's interesting when I think of like people I coached, or I was just on a study hall call earlier today, and I was talking with someone that was going to be pitching something. She's like, I don't know what I'm going to pitch. What should I pitch? And I remember saying to her, oh, it doesn't really matter. Like, it actually doesn't really matter what you pitch, whether you pitch this thing or this thing or this thing, because it's more about like, what is the energy behind it? What's the intention behind it, right? You know, I think we spend way too much time fixated on the thing instead of the intention, you know, and the meaning behind the thing. Kind of like the focus on the body instead of focusing on like the soul, you know?
In a very like mundane version, that made what you said made me think of that too. And like also what I was saying before was like when we used to be able to go to like restaurants and things like that. But like, hopefully the food is good. But like, the service can make or break a place. Like, if it's like a like whatever diner, but like if you have the nicest, funniest, like whatever, you feel like your best friend's server, it's like amazing. You're like, oh, I love this place. And like, the food's like not anything special, but it's fine. But like, if it's really good food and like it's just like very like uptight, and like the service is like fine, but like very like formal, and you're like not feeling like a connection, just like the food was amazing, but like the people didn't matter.
Yeah.
And so it really is like it's the energy behind it. Like you were saying with this like pitch or whatever, it's just like, it's the energy you're bringing to it, and like what you're bringing to this moment now.
Yeah, it reminds me of a friend of Lauren and ours named Jen Abels. And Jennifer Abels, talk about like impact, right? So she did this thing called Soldiers Who Salsa, got veterans that like were MVPs to dance, right?
I've heard her on a podcast.
Yeah. Oh,
probably.
Sweet. Awesome.
Yeah.
Anyway, what she did when she traveled all the time was she would bring candy, like in a bag, and she would give it to the flight attendants with a note saying like, thank you very much for all that you do, because, you know, just because no one says that. Well, not only did that actually inspired my friend Sean Dugar, who also travels all the time. And he came up with Candy Drop based off of me sharing that story with her. So then now he's doing his thing. Mind you, Jen and I connect because like now the flight attendants, we sit right next to each other. This is how we met, you know. And the flight attendants now are like giving her free drinks because, oh, you're so nice. And then I'm wearing my stupid bow tie and we're just like nerding out. But she taught me something recently when she shared the story of how she was just like, oh yeah, so my friend Jeff, I met him in like 2017 and he was a small character in my story, you know, and then in 2020, all of a sudden he became a big character in my story. And I think there's something curious and fascinating about that, of like when people fall into your life to be like, ooh, I wonder how they play a role and what impact they have, and do they matter, do they not matter? But it's just like they're here right now, and somehow they might
changed the course of my life. Even
whether they show back up or not.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Even though, well, yeah, whether they show up or not.
Because I feel like we all have had those small characters who like have not shown back up again and probably won't ever, at least that we can fathom. But like there's like that one like summer camp or you were on a vacation somewhere and met some person and it was just amazing. And you're like, bye forever. But it was great. Like that was an awesome moment, energy, feeling, exchange of humankind.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what matters.
That's what makes life worth living. Things like that.
That's where the magic is.
Whew, that was a big last question, but it was a good one.
So any final thoughts before we wrap up?
I was like, we covered a lot of ground. I have
All
no
the
idea.
things, when you write your bio, put your tombstone on it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's it.
I
That's
think
end transaction.
I think that is okay. So again, this is Jeff Harry with Rediscover Your Play.
And I'm Lauren.
Oh, I'm Julia. Sorry. I was just basking in the wonderfulness of this.
We're just here. It's fine.
And yes, Lauren.
Oh, and I'm Lauren Yee. It's been great
Amazing.
chatting.
And I'm Julia D. Caneva, and I can't take a cue, so.
Thanks everyone for listening. Talk to you later.